oh, sorry, Sylvie, that we, used up resources and everything. Look, we used up resources. Guess what? They took my baby. Now they just left just now. I have a picture right outside. They had right across the street, they had a cop car and a SUV stay here until just now, the whole time after the removal, and all night last night, Jonathan. They came at 10 o'clock at night to take the baby. And then when we didn't let them, they had a police officer in an SUV, and they took turns, and they had them shining their high beams in my friend's backyard the entire night, harassing us. And then they go this morning at 8:45 and get an order on a false report saying that I had a baby and that it didn't have medical care. Jonathan, I was at the doctor yesterday with a clean bill of health. I have the documentation. They have no right to do this. Is stealing children,
I mean,
Jonathan.
this is your newborn. What's your daughter's name? What's your daughter's name?
I'm not telling anybody that.
But you had a daughter five days ago. You went to get medical care for her, and then they're acting this quickly. It just shows. What do you think this is about? Who do you think is like behind this? Why does this keep happening to you? Is your father involved?
It's my father. It's my father. He is running this town like a local mob boss with Eric Flowers. He's the one that got him into office. I have the text messages from a year ago I don't know the time right now, but a year or two ago when I had an issue, and he said, yes, here's Eric Flowers. He's about to be sheriff because I endorsed him. He'll help you. And I have his phone number, his cell in my phone from that. And now that my dad has done all of this, they're aiding and abetting him. I was already protesting against CPS corruption. So they're all targeting me, and they know me in town, even though they say they don't. There's a conflict of interest with the local GAL. They're all friends. And my father has been doing this. The pregnancy and everything. They're not fighting to return children. They're fighting to take children.
And I believe when you were at one of your prior court hearings, I did ask you, I said, do you think once your child is born that they'll come get her right away? And you said, yeah. You said that they'll find a reason to get her right away. And it seems like that's just happened now.
Yes. And it's not just me. This is a playbook, Jonathan, across our country. Mm-hmm. They're doing and they're attacking single mothers and mothers while they're promoting a father's rights movement. And I support healthy parenting, healthy co-parenting. I don't care, man, woman, whatever. But the problem with the father's rights movement, and DeSantis is very dangerous doing this, is that it is allowing the system and abusers to get hold of children and keep retaliating against mothers. And this is not okay in this country. There are tens of thousands, not hundreds of thousands of parents, and especially mothers, fighting for their kids under these same playbooks. The same playbook. It's so sick.
So,
and
they have. What happens now? Where is your daughter now? Is she?
They took her. They're going to take her to a hospital to get checked out. This is not thinking about the best interest of the children. Children are supposed to stay with their mothers, and DeSantis
especially 5-day-year-old children. This is a 5-day-year-old child.
Yes, and DeSantis was supposed to put stuff in place for the efforts are supposed to be offer every service and do everything in your power to keep the children in the home. And DCF told me today that I was hanging out with the wrong people, I was listening to the wrong people, and I needed to get help.
And they're basing this off what? How are they coming up with this determination? Who you are supposed to associate?
Right.
Who you're
so do you hear how subjective that is?
Yes.
Yes.
And they're going by who? John and his lawyers?
They said that they got a report last night, and that's a lie. It's and it is my dad's lawyer and him calling in, just like the months ago when they came in and were going through the neighborhood like the Gestapo to hunt me down, a pregnant lady, and asking neighbors and knocking on doors. This is not okay.
So John made the report last night on you.
I'm assuming that it was him because I was told on the last report when they were knocking on the doors that it was my dad's lawyer and him saying that I was pregnant and that I had had the baby. That's a false report. I was months away from having the baby.
So is John, is his goal at this point to get your new child and get full custody of your new child?
Well, you know what's even more gross is that he just took my other children to the Finger Lakes, knowing that I'm pregnant and knowing that they were going to take my child. So now my child will go into foster care if I don't find a family to shelter him that I know.
Wow.
And I asked, the woman that I'm staying with, my dear friend, is a wonderful mother, wonderful woman. And I said, can she be sheltered here with Caroline? And they said, yes, but you're not allowed to live there then. So then I'll be homeless.
So, I feel your pain and your emotion. I can't imagine what a mother is going through to have their newborn, not any child, but their newborn that they just had. You're bonding with your daughter. You're taking your daughter to get medical care, and they come and take your daughter away. Unbelievable. And
because the judge ordered it. That's what they said. The judge.
So I noticed in
and
your
then
video.
My lawyer said,
no, go ahead. I'm sorry.
My lawyer said, well, you didn't come to the hearing this morning. Well, this was the first hearing I had a lawyer. I've never been through this. I was told that my lawyer goes and represents me there, that I didn't need to go to the hearing.
So what was this hearing supposed to be about? A reference to your?
It was an emergency hearing. They came last night at 10 o'clock at night and said, oh, that's fine. We'll talk to you tomorrow. I said, we can talk tomorrow, and I would have given them the documentation from the doctor and everything. And at 11 o'clock last night, they text me a Zoom link saying, here's your court hearing at 8:45 in the morning. And then they put sheriffs out shining high beams in the house and everything all night long, the dogs barking, everything. It is such harassment. And Indian River County has been known for 40 years for being corrupt. This needs to end. This sheriff has been cheating on his wife with his 8-year-old son. He is, everyone, half the town is calling for him to resign. He needs to resign. And my father needs to be investigated. False reporting, Jonathan, is a 3rd-degree felony up to 5 years. And my dad now has 3 counts, and that's not even if you did a count on each child.
So you're saying he keeps making these claims, to who's he claim? Is he making it to DCS or the local sheriffs?
Yeah, he's having his attorney and other people call because he's hiding. The coward is hidden for a year and not answered me. How does this man say that he loves his child and he wants the best for her and get help, but then you give her the silent treatment and steal her children, take her home, take her career, have her have to sell her car, do all of this and not even talk to her? Mr. John Walsh, I thought he was so great and powerful, right? And so everybody, the father, whatever. No, he is doing this to me, and my mother is doing it too. And it's because I'm also speaking out against the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children.
What is his end game here? What do you think? What do you think his goal is trying to do here?
I've watched him do it to other women that his friends are with. They claim that the mothers have mental illness. They get the children taken to break the mothers because then you are going to go crazy without your children. And they ruin these women and they grab their chest to the authorities saying, we did all we can. We don't know what else to do. And they play the victim. It's narcissism to an extreme. It's abuse. It's so many things. It's domestic violence and it's domestic terrorism. My father is a domestic terrorist, Jonathan. I'm saying it out loud. He is paid opposition and makes everyone think that there's these huge narratives and it's in the best interest of the public. It's in the best interest of children. And they are making so much money. They have full immunity. I mean, it is absolutely, while they get federal, my dad says all this stuff to then implement federalized policing and all these different things. I mean, it's unconstitutional. It's not okay. And now because I speak out about the National Center and CPS and everything, now he's terrified. He's stolen my kids. I also think that there's a financial part of this. I think they had no money 2 years ago except for an asset, and they put something in my inheritance that they want to get guardianship fraud. This is guardianship fraud and conservatorship fraud, and Florida is so sorry my words, but it's one of the highest states for guardianship and conservatorship fraud.
So what do you want to see happen? What changes do you want to see happen? What is your next steps? What are you going to do? What are you going to do now?
I don't know, because I've been speaking out for a year, and the country, the people need to come together, and we need a lawyer. We need a good lawyer that will fight for what's right. We have done everything. I have paralegal. I have everything that we will do the work for the lawyer, but we just need someone to fight. And we need the people to come together and start realizing what CPS really is. It's not in the best interest of our children. And DeSantis just got from 7.5 last year to over $20 million this year, Jonathan. And there is every incentive to take children, and there's no monetary incentive to return children.
So, are they giving you a hearing? Do you have a hearing coming up? A new hearing? What's
I'm asking my lawyer now, who's not doing anything for me. She's, telling me again, I'm listening to the wrong people. I'm, all of this.
Is this a court-appointed lawyer? A court-appointed lawyer from Indian River?
Yeah, and the judge intimidated me into getting her, and then saying that if you take a court-appointed attorney, your emotions, the problem is, Megan, is that you didn't go to law school. So none of your stuff is legal. I believe that you're mentally capable. He reiterated it and said, but you're not legally capable. So if you take a court-appointed attorney, I will have them refile, or they need to refile your motions, and I will rule on them in chambers. And as soon as I took the court-appointed attorney, Jonathan, the next day, he struck 24 of my motions. Since January, he's been on this case, and he has not entertained or given me a hearing on one of my motions. And then he grants emergency hearings for them to take my children out of state to the Finger Lakes until August, because my dad claimed it was a family tradition. I haven't been to the Finger Lakes since they held me hostage up there with my baby. I stopped going up there. That might have been their tradition. That's not my family's tradition. That's not me and my children. I was going no contact with my dad for 6 months before he did this stuff. And I was in contact with my dad, but I wasn't seeing him in person because of the assault. That I can even send you pictures of the assault from my mother, with the bite mark on my arm, my nose where I'm trying to heal cancer, bloody because she scraped me with her claws while she's yanking my hair down to the floor while I'm holding my other baby. This was 2 years ago at Thanksgiving. And I stopped contact with them at the advice of my therapist too, who actually had to stop seeing them because how crazy they were, and was helping me establish my life without them. And I was doing it for 6 months, and my dad would call so frantic about, oh, we want to see Ava, my daughter. They always target her. You just let us have her for a night. Just let us see. I said, Dad, you and Mom need to get help. I love you, and I want to have a relationship with you. That's why I live in this town, but you need to finally get help. And my family had never been thriving more, me and my children, meaning. And then my dad couldn't take it because he's a psychopath, and he goes and does all of this stuff. And they were lining it up for a year before, because I think, like I was saying, that they were having financial problems, and they got this woman, Rebecca Inman here, she has victims that have called the sheriff and let them know, and the sheriff ignores it and keeps going with this to aid and abet John Walsh in his crime. I mean, Jonathan, God forbid John Walsh would be lying, right? That's not at all possible.
Do you think,
especially with everything coming out across the country about the National Center, about all of this stuff, databases and children and everything.
Do you think John Walsh loves you?
At this point, this is not love. This is severe abuse. And I was speaking up about the abuse to them. And this is also the point where 6% of women are believed when they report domestic violence, or children also. This is horrible. DeSantis actually technically has custody of my children right now, and he's ignored me.
So let me understand this. Okay, so a woman like yourself just had their newborn taken away. As they're taken away, do the police or CPS offer any services for you, like psychological help or medical help. You just had.
Well, because that's what they make money off of. That's what the case plan is. They say, oh, we're taking the baby now, but you can fight in court. There's no fight in court. These are not real courts. They are corrupt. They all work together. Even my court appointed attorney, just do the case plan, do the case plan. Then they keep extending the case plan. They never even had proof to do a case plan. And all they do is hide behind the judge's orders. Oh, the judge ordered this. The judge ordered this. The police also do it. The police are going and aiding and abetting CPS to do these removals, and they have no knowledge. The false report, they should have looked at CPS and said, well, we need to criminally investigate now if this is a false report.
And I heard that today on your live. I don't know who was with you. I heard a male voice, and they were asking them, you know what you're actually coming for? You know the details. And they didn't. They're just going by orders. So a judge just writes something down, says, come and, take this child, and that's it. And they just do it, but they don't question it themselves of what they're actually doing.
Right.
Maybe, down the line, authorities, like law enforcement should, know a little bit about details and question it instead of just going by what one person writes by the stroke of their pen.
And that's the thing, is that they, there are real issues of neglect and abuse. That's undeniable. But you know what? That's why we have a criminal justice system. And you do an investigation. And even in my case, to take my original 3 children, by law, it's required to do a 60-day investigation, and they did nothing. They did not do it. So that should be a default already. And you know what? We have that system. And if there's a criminal issue or there's a real issue of neglect or abuse, then that needs to be criminally handled and investigated. Not just taking children under, this is because I am traditional. And this is because I homeschooled. This is every type of, and I'm, Christian and all this stuff. It's every type of discrimination. These are constitutional rights violations, civil rights violations, liberty right violations.
Also, I know you're going through a roller coaster of emotions. I want to let you know you do have lots of support out there and people that love you, Megan. Please don't do anything irrational or,
No, I never would.
It's your own child being taken away. Just surround yourself with positive people and fight how you feel you should fight, but don't give up. And don't feel like you're hopeless in this situation. I know I can just see the pain and the emotions in your eyes, and I do want to share your story. I'm sharing your story because you want to get it out there of what goes on.
Yeah, Jonathan, I can't thank you enough. I really, for all of that you said, all of that heart, I really appreciate it, Jonathan. And they want to claim mental illness and all of this, and I am still here over a year later of daily, from morning to night, harassment and threats and terror. My children not coming home, the legal abuse. They just passed stuff about legal abuse, and that's real. This has been absolutely abusive. We're supposed to have a justice system that's supposed to know the truth and stick to it, and no one's doing that.
Was this a warrant they came with today, like an actual warrant?
Well, we don't. A judge's order, which is basically a warrant.
They didn't.
And they said they were going to. They said they were going to knock down the door and use force and all of this. The chief of police was standing there, just like a disgusting monster, staring at my children. He's like, "This is taking too long." And then they said they're going to, like I said, they've opened a criminal investigation because we hindered the taking of the baby.
Well, all I heard in the live was you questioning what they're doing and what it is, not hindering.
And they were
hindering would be blocking and barricading yourself in. Did they take anything? Did they take any clothing? Did they take any items?
They took 2 blankets because I wanted her to have my smell.
So are you concerned about how she's going to be treated right now?
Yes, and where she's going. I mean, this is sick, Jonathan. This is beyond. And this is happening every minute in our country. This is happening every minute. I am not a special case. Yes, it's harder because who my dad is, but this is the corruption.
Yes, absolutely.
America, Jonathan.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, because it's your father, John
your own
what's
family.
going on behind the scenes and what's going on with his own family, and what's he's the
Exactly.
situation that you guys are going through right now. And this has been going
Yeah,
on how long? For about a year now?
over a year. Over a year. And in 2 weeks, they're trying to adopt my children from me.
Sad, sad. And I just think, and we've talked before, this it seems like this is over, his parental rights, the way you want to raise your own children, and
And they also know that in Florida, there's no grandparents' rights.
oh wow, so there's no grandparents rights in Florida. Interesting. I think a lot of people have to know that, and should know that and everything like that. Well, I'll keep communicating with you. I'll keep getting this message
Okay.
out. I'm going to get this out right now and share this, what's going on,
Thank
our
you.
discussion here. And I will, let me know whenever the court date is. Hopefully I can, also help, get the message out so more people come to your court hearing for support and to bring
Yeah.
awareness to what's going on. I
Yep.
just stay optimistic. It seems like somebody's with you now. Just surround yourself with
Yeah.
people. Try to stay away from alcohol and drugs. I'm not saying you
I
do
don't.
that.
I don't drink. Yep.
But
Yep.
just try to keep a positive mindset and just keep fighting. But don't give up hope, Megan. I cannot imagine. I have a cat, right? I couldn't imagine somebody coming, taking my cat
Yep.
away from me. I don't have children. I have a cat, but I could not
Right.
imagine some
I love your cat, by the way.
thank you. I appreciate it. Outside entity taking away something, you're precious. These are your children, and these are agencies that
These
are,
are humans. These are babies. Like this is not a dog, like a boat or something. These are humans. They are taking humans. How are people not okay? Trump would talk about the country finding out everything about these judges and about these systems and about the stealing of our children. You know,
yeah. All right, Megan. We'll
I'm
we'll, we'll
so
chat again.
heartbroken.
We'll chat again. Just stay hopeful. I am praying for you. I'm praying for people around you. Um, I just stay strong. All right, Megan. Stay strong. How's it going? I'm praying for you, Megan.
Thank you, Jonathan. How are you doing, bud?
I saw your Facebook Live and I want to get your story out there. I think it's very important. It's a travesty of what's happening to you, Megan. And I'm just dumbfounded that they came and took your child away today. Who was that?
It was DCF. It was CHS, Children Home Society, and it was the police. It's Eric Flowers, the sheriff, and Mike Dilks is the officer that started doing this to us over a year ago.
Yeah.
He was known for being a racist TikTok star and was disciplined and everything like 2.5, 3 years ago, and just got out of discipline or what I don't know the exact facts, but it was known like all over the country about him and his wife making racist videos on TikTok while he's in uniform in the police car, all this kind of stuff. And he and the sheriff are best friends. He has done this. That's when the first thing they started, April Fool's Day last year, was illegally pulling me over with unmarked cars and him getting out. I have it all on video in his like street clothes. They just said that they're opening a criminal investigation on us because for hindering the removal when they were talking to us the entire time, and they said that we oh sorry Sylvia, that we used up resources and everything. Look, we used up resources. Guess what? They took my baby. Now they just left just now. I have a picture right outside. They had a right across the street. They had a cop car and a SUV stay here until just now, the whole time after the removal, and all night last night, Jonathan. They came at 10 o'clock at night to take the baby, and then when we didn't let them, they had a police officer in an SUV, and they took turns and they had them shining their high beams in my friend's backyard the entire night, harassing us. And then they go this morning at 8:45 and get an order on a false report saying that I had a baby and that it didn't have medical care. Jonathan, I was at the doctor yesterday with a clean bill of health. I have the documentation. They have no right to do this. Is stealing children,
I mean,
Jonathan.
this is your newborn. You just, what was your daughter's name?
5 days.
What's your daughter's name?
I'm not telling anybody that.
But you had a daughter 5 days ago. You went to get medical care for her, and then they're acting this quickly. It just shows. What do you think this is about? Who do you think is like behind this? Why does this keep happening to you? Is your father involved?
It's my father. It's my father. He is running this town like a local mob boss with Eric Flowers. He's the one that got him into office. I have the text messages from a year ago I don't know the time right now, but a year or two ago when my dad, I had an issue and he said, yes, here's Eric Flowers. He's about to be sheriff because I endorsed him. He'll help you. And I have his phone number, his cell in my phone from that. And now that my dad has done all of this, they're aiding and abetting him. I was already protesting against CPS corruption. So they're all targeting me, and they know me in town, even though they say they don't. There's a conflict of interest with the local GAL. They're all friends. And my father has been doing this. He, the pregnancy and everything. They're not fighting to return children. They're fighting to take children.
And I believe when you were at one of your prior court hearings, I did ask you, I said, do you think once your child is born that they'll come get her right away? And you said, yeah. You said that they'll find a reason to get her right away. And it seems like that's just happened now.
Yes. And it's not just me. This is a playbook, Jonathan, across our country.
Mm-hmm.
They're doing and they're attacking single mothers and mothers while they're promoting a father's rights movement. And they're, I support healthy parenting, healthy co-parenting. I don't care, man, woman, whatever. But the problem with the father's rights movement, and DeSantis is very dangerous doing this, is that it is allowing the system and abusers to get hold of children and keep retaliating against mothers. And this is not okay in this country. There are tens of thousands, not hundreds of thousands of parents, and especially mothers, fighting for their kids under these same playbooks. The same playbook. It's so sick.
So,
and they have
what
sorry.
happened?
Enough of me talking. And I'll jump into comments when we watch. Like I said, it's only about 7.5, 8 minutes.
It's one of the most famous crimes in American history. In fact, it's been called the crime that changed America. Before the disappearance of 6-year-old Adam Walsh, there were no Amber Alerts or missing kids on milk cartons. But during the decades the case went unsolved, Adam's father, John Walsh, got famous for hunting down bad guys on America's Most Wanted. Adam's mother has been largely silent until tonight.
This is America's Most Wanted.
On his show, America's Most Wanted, John Walsh has helped capture more than 1,000 criminals.
Next time I see Alan White's face, I want to see bars in front of him.
But unbelievably, for decades, the one case he couldn't crack was the murder of his own son. Until several years ago, when his wife, Reve, said she had had enough.
I can't go to my grave not doing everything that I could possibly do. And I said, we're going to get a cold case detective, and we're going to start from the beginning. I don't care if you go to work just to pay the bill of this private investigator, but we're going to get somebody.
It has been 30 years since Adam Walsh was abducted in America's most famous case of a missing child. During that time, Reve has largely stood by silently while her husband held the spotlight. But in this rare interview, she tells her story, the story of one mother's quiet, fierce determination.
Do you remember the last thing that he said to you?
Sure. I said, I'm going right over here to the lab department. And he said, okay, Mommy, I know where that is.
With no thought in your mind that that was the last conversation?
No.
Adam was abducted from outside a suburban shopping mall on July 27, 1981. 2 agonizing weeks later, John got the news that Adam's severed head had been found floating in a canal.
I got that call. And they said, we got to find your wife, and we got to tell her. And I said, you know what? I'll tell her. I'll be the one to tell her. Toughest thing I've ever done.
When all this was going
You
on,
lying.
and I just thought to myself, God,
You want to be the one to tell
wait,
her.
so it's
Sound like a lie.
25 years from
Oh,
now.
shit.
I don't care about getting old. I just want this experience in my life to be that far away from me, because I thought it would be, different. But it's really not.
I don't know who would do this to a 6-year-old child. I can't conceive of it.
The horror of losing a child was made worse, say the Walshes, by their bitter disappointment with the local police in Hollywood, Florida, who they believe botched the murder investigation.
Little did we know that nothing was being done.
One nightmare after another.
There was even a prime suspect, this man, Otis Toole, an admitted serial killer who was already in prison.
You gotta kill one, and you can't kill it and kill it. It gets easier and easier, and it don't really bother you.
Toole made 24 documented confessions to killing Adam Walsh, including during this 1984 interview with the Texas Rangers.
Have you ever wished you hadn't killed someone?
Well, I kind of feel bad about Adam Walsh kid.
That's the only person you've ever killed that you feel bad about?
That's the youngest child I ever killed. He's only 6 years old.
But even this confession was not enough for the Hollywood Police Department to push to file charges. And so after the case sat idle for roughly 1/4 of a century, Reve urged John to hire a cold case investigator. This man, Joe Matthews, a retired police detective.
So you look at the markers.
Matthews went back and painstakingly pored over every one of the 10,000 pages in the case file, reporting back almost daily to Reve. Matthews concluded that the lead detective on the Walsh case, a man named Jack Hoffman, had become convinced, despite compelling evidence, that Otis Toole didn't do it.
So Otis Toole confesses to this crime repeatedly, knows things about the crime that only the police knew. Yet the lead investigator, Detective Hoffman, doesn't believe him. Why not?
Ego was involved in tunnel vision. And the tunnel vision is you come up with your own hypotheses as to what took place. And you work that case to validate your own hypotheses.
After combing through the case file, Matthews made a major discovery, a roll of film from the crime scene of Otis Toole's car, film that the original detectives never even bothered to have developed. The film contained what Matthews considered to be a monumental revelation.
How long did it take for you to realize what you had here?
Within seconds when I was going through the photos.
On the rear floorboard of the car, where Toole had admitted to tossing Adam's severed head, the outline of a face with the darkened eye sockets and open mouth.
You actually see his image, and it's as clear as the, shrouded turret.
To me, it was
What the
the
hell?
one thing that a mother knows.
You gotta
is
be
that
kidding
this
me.
is their child. This picture is their child.
In 2008, based on these new pictures and a mountain of other evidence that Detective Matthews finally pulled together in a way that the original detectives had failed to do, the new Hollywood Police Department chief officially closed the case, definitively naming Otis Toole, who by this time had died in prison, as the man who killed Adam Walsh.
If Otis Toole was alive today, he would be arrested for the abduction and murder of Adam Walsh on July 27.
What a coincidence that he dies in jail.
That came off of
What a coincidence.
Wagner's lips just penetrate my soul.
It took Detective Matthews, working with the Walshes, just 2.5 years to do what the Hollywood Police.
Okay, again, the most powerful, biggest case ever brought to the American public of a missing child, and they get some cold case cop to solve it. What a storyline. Isn't that Hollywood? Well, you have to be in make-believe land that the most powerful investigators in the world were not supposedly looking for this child. What a joke. So let's just get right to some more information about other cases of children being murdered and dismembered in Florida that I don't am not aware that John Walsh ever covered. Bingo! Yes, we got a preacher in Florida who's a foster parent who murders Freddie Laster. Yes, he did. He murdered Freddie Laster. Pornography issues, molestation issues, foster parent. Florida, never talked about. Dismembered body, dismembered Freddie Laster, threw him in a dumpster. For 2 weeks after he went missing, there's a there's a corpse in a trash bag in a dumpster, and the police in Florida can't connect it, and it took them 20 years to put the DNA of the corpse with Freddie Laster, a young teenage boy. Why doesn't he talk about this? Isn't that the scenario that we're hearing? Why is he not covered this case? Why is John Walsh not covered Freddie Laster, Hyde? Just even this one, the two boys that went missing, we're unsure about what's going on here. Two boys within 8 miles of Hyde, the foster parent preacher, Jeffrey Dahmer, foster parent, dismembering foster kids after using them in molestation, and then throwing them in a dumpster. The actual picture right there, you're seeing it. And the Florida police can't put two and two together. Hey, we got a missing foster kid. Well, there's a corpse in the trash can at the gas station. Huh. So it's really easy to see what's going on, that they cover up crimes. They don't things that go against their agenda. So these two boys went missing within miles of the Jeffrey Dahmer of Florida, that foster parent, preacher, minister, school youth counselor, everything. He's a he's a killer, and these two boys went missing as well. Not sure if John Walsh has covered this case, but this is within 8 miles of Hyde, and there could be a definite connection of a possible serial killer foster parent there in Florida that's never really been talked about like it should have been, and the case should have been solved a long time ago. Just wanted to go over that. Also, we have reports of a DNA test for Adam that someone who claims to be Adam and unconfirmed, they can't get results back. You know, you send out your DNA and you want to get a DNA report, and it doesn't come back from a child who claims to be not a child, but a grown man now who claims to be Adam. So we're unsure about anything here, but we know what we've been told in the storyline. It's like the cop found a roll of film inside the vehicle on a cold case that's 20 years old. He finds a roll of film and that never been developed. You know, just my God, that's fairy tale land. What a joke. But what a great time to untie everything and untie your mind, free your mind from the fear campaign. That this was a huge fear campaign coming out of Florida. Unsure what happened. So we don't let them get your heartstrings. That's the worst thing you can do. They talk about tunnel vision. What about heartstring being pulled vision, where your heartstrings are tugged at, and that's the whole nature of what happened with this case. But what we're finding now is that there's not a lot of credibility from anyone in the case, telling us it's Otis Toole and Jeffrey Dahmer and these other characters. Why would we believe them when they're putting out a ridiculous story like they are right now, that if a roll of film was found by an independent detective that was never developed in the car of a serial killer? Want me to play that part again? I'm going to keep this rolling. Stand by.
Department could not do over the course of decades. Today, John and Reve are still living in Florida, where they have a horse farm and 3 children, all born after Adam, who would now be 36 years old.
Yes. Nothing's going to bring Adam back. Nothing's going to bring him back. So the most we could hope for was to have peace, knowing that we know what happened, we know the end result, and the puzzle is finished.
For Nightline, this is Dan Harris.
All right, let me get this audio out of my ear real quick. Get the single year just here in the United States. The story you're going to hear tonight is just one family that's just been struck to this day. Every time I do a show, I'm just like, please let my audio work. Mike was in here a little bit ago, and it looks like he bounced out. So he says he's got to get his audio working. So he'll jump in and we'll ad lib this. The story is profound enough that even if it ultimately ended up just being me and you, it'll work. So if you can, for the guests that don't know who you are, because like I said, I kind of prefaced the show and told them about America's Most Wanted here and the host, who's your father, John Walsh. But a lot of people might not know about his children, outside of Adam. So if you can just, tell the viewers that are watching us tonight a little bit about yourself.
Absolutely. My name is Megan Walsh. I was born not even a year after my brother Adam disappeared from the Sears in Hollywood, Florida. I was born in Hollywood, Florida as well. And then I do have two younger brothers. Some may know my brother Callahan Walsh. Just recently became a co-host with my father on his newer show, In Pursuit with John Walsh. And I also have a 27-year-old brother, Hayden, who came thereafter. So we're the children of John and Reve that have come after Adam, and it's been quite a ride.
I can imagine. Now, the three of us had a chance to talk on the phone last night and kind of get a feel for each other, and the energy in that room was something, or on that phone call. And I kind of told you and Mike when we were talking, I remember, and I'm 42 years old, but I think a lot of people in the audience, if the analytics of YouTube's telling the truth, about 60% of the audience that we have tonight is between the ages of 36 and 52. So everybody's going to be, most of those people at least are going to be very familiar probably with who your father was. I grew up watching, it was Wednesday nights, the way I remember it, I grew up watching America's Most Wanted, and then it was followed up by Unsolved Mysteries. And when I saw your dad and that story, I was very young when what happened to your brother happened, but that's a story that just kind of stayed in the media year after year after year, with Adam. And everybody associates what your dad was and what your dad was a part of as this hero and this good man. But unfortunately, there's another side that we haven't seen of the true story that involves your father, unfortunately. So life for you, you were in the scene, you kind of mingled with all these people, you met all these people. And then a few years ago, there was something that kind of, we said red pilled or woke you up. If you can kind of touch and give us a little bit of background on what that was. Was it a specific thing with Epstein? What was it that kind of opened your eyes and kind of started this ball rolling into a nightmare for you?
Again, I have been through a lot in my life, and I actually ended up going into healing work and emotional healing and different things of that nature. I was a religious scholar for over 20 years. And being in that environment, can you hear me? I think we froze.
Yeah, I can hear you fine. You're okay. Coming in good, and the video's coming in good.
Oh, okay. Mine's frozen. Sorry, guys. Just a second. Okay, as long as we're good. Mine's frozen, but we'll figure it out. So basically I had been in that realm, after leaving fashion and music. So if people look into my background, I was in fashion and music for a long time. And I saw a lot after, especially growing up in the industry, being born in the industry. And I started questioning things, especially when Epstein came out, as you mentioned. That's really when I started questioning my father. Prior to that, I'd started looking into my brother's case. The case files are public record. And I thought finally at 30-something years old, I would not, kind of look into the story myself and not just the narrative that, the public has been given and that I've been given my entire life and never really questioned, rightfully so. All of this, to be going through this now that we'll get into is horrifying for me. It's heartbreaking. I don't want to have to be talking like this. I honor my mother and father, but, truth and justice is most important to me. And when I started asking questions, especially when Epstein, was arrested and everything came out, I kind of said, Dad, like, what is this about? Like, these are a lot of the people that you know, what's the scoop here? Did you ever see this? And, what's going on? Or was it like McCain's wife said, and, you guys all knew what was going on, but what were you going to do about it? And, when I would ask questions like this, as well as about Laura Silsby and Haiti and her connection to Amber Alert, and kind of inquiring how the National Center for Missing Exploited Children was responding to the questions about her and the connections. I just, instead of, my father really talking to me, and I almost thought, naive me, I thought that he would actually be proud. We've been a crime fighting family since I was born. And I kind of thought that he would really, kind of respect that and be into it. But instead I was met with a lot of, oh, this is ridiculous. Oh yeah, what were we gonna do? And, this is crazy. And, kind of very deflective responses. And then things kind of started cascading from there. The more that I kind of talked out, spoke up and spoke out about things and questioned the narrative. And as I look deeper, and as we'll see coming up, it gets deep, right?
No, it most definitely does. When you were asking these questions of John or your father, was this kind of over a period of a lengthy amount of time? Was this kind of one day where you just dropped this bomb on him, where he kind of started pushing it away? I mean, you know your family better than anybody else that's out there, better than the media, better than his friends. I mean, you grew up. This was your life. For us, it's a story, it's a show, but for you, it was your life. When you started asking these questions, did anything kind of register with you, like my dad is just, something's not right here? And do you remember what kind of questions specifically started making it go from, hey, it's this to actually being aggressive towards you in his response? Do you remember?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, like I mentioned, specifically the Epstein, and that is what kind of made me, kind of start questioning things and really started setting off alarms within me. Just these responses didn't line up. The over, emotion that was with it, again, shaming me for asking. When I would think that somebody would just really want to answer it and actually be interested in talking about these things, especially given what he does and what his life's about. So that really did strike a nerve. I also should say that I not only was asking questions, but I was speaking up. I was starting to speak up about the abuse that you kind of realize as you grow, that had happened to me growing up, and that I've endured, obviously up until this day. It seems to have gotten worse, as we'll find out, but yeah, I was speaking up about the abuse and kind of the coercive control and narcissistic abuse that, I've had therapists, I have healing groups and things that, I'd kind of come to, and really trying to protect my children. And these people on TV and personalities, they have exactly that. They have a public persona. And it's very interesting, how people love my father's vigor and his passion, how he says dirt bags and scumbags and everything, but they don't really, I think about what that might translate into in private, behind closed doors.
And I think that's the part that people are going to be a little bit more receptive towards and understanding of, given the current climate that we're in right now, as everybody kind of does, all their own individual investigations or deep dives or rabbit hole, whatever, you call it. People are starting to realize, hey, the information that we've been fed over our lifetime is kind of like a Hollywood movie script. They've told us what they wanted us to hear. They've told us, what we're supposed to believe. They've, and we'll get into it, they've done programming. And when I look to, America's Most Wanted, and the stories that was there and the theme music that was behind it, I mean, just as a kid, I know it made me like, hey, if I'm going to the, the Boys and Girls Club, like my head's on a swivel. So if that's the fear you had as a young kid, if you're aware of this, I'm sure that translated into parents. The way, and somebody had put in the comments a little while ago, the story of Adam Walsh really changed how people took care of their kids. And even though there's some darkness behind that story, at least there's some positive things that came out from it. It's just unfortunate that it came at the sacrifice of your family. So if we can kind of go back in time a little bit and give Mike a little bit more time, and hopefully he gets this audio stuff worked out from growing up. Do you now, when you look back hindsight, do you remember anything, whether it was things you saw or places you went or people you and your family visited, that now you look back and you're like, that was this? Like, are there anything specific that comes to mind? I see you smiling, so I'm thinking you probably remember a few things that you can share with us.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to, it's a very serious topic, but it's just wild, that notion of actually looking back on things and really processing them in a different way and seeing different things from what you experience or what you remember as a child and when you're involved in it and kind of enmeshed and caught up in that, it was very much like the John and Reve Walsh show and the big narrative. And that's what we were worried about as kids, was really always being there, and showing up for my parents wherever they needed and for this cause, so absolutely looking back on things, it would take me hours to go through even just the different years of my life of things that I noticed. And that's, really something, you had asked right before if there was something specific, but again, as you also mentioned, that a lot of us have been realizing these things. A lot of us have been talking about it. And, that was really wild for me and also very validating. Yeah, growing up, I mean, for instance, why was I a baby, at the White House all the time and around lobbying for legislation and around all these adults at tables and in these little dresses and, presented to the presidents and different things like that. Excuse me. And then, throughout my youth, just, there's pictures of me with George Michael, being held as a child that's like a little too old to be held like I am for pictures. And, just these little nuances, honestly, I mean, that's how they get away with it. That's how they program us. And then you look back and kind of pick it apart. But yeah, definitely. I mean, the trips that we've gone on around the world and where they were, specifically like Australia and China and, specific places, India, Morocco, and who we were with royalty and, just different, money and around those environments. So yeah, I don't want to take too much time going into each of those, but there are definitely a lot of instances that I look back on, even from, my time in the music industry and how I got into that, moving from fashion and kind of being targeted at LA Fashion Week, if you will. And then moving into music and based in Chicago. Actually, my 4-year-old son is with the best friend, childhood best friend and current best friend, and they work together of Kanye West. So after being around fashion and art and obviously a background in youth and entertainment and politics, it just all kind of started flooding in, if you will. Once I left, I kind of said, what does the devil look like? What is evil if I were to kind of put it in the context of our world here on earth? And, to me, it started just coming, and I would literally ask them in the music industry, I would look these people in the face and I would say, what is this? Is the devil like men in black suits with contracts? Like, what are agents? Just be asking these things and these notions, when you're in the studio or the handler, basically artist developer, is driving you around and you find a Freemason ring in his car door and he's asking you, oh, you must know about that, your father and everything. At that point, I was like, I don't know about this stuff. This was 6-7 years ago, and thought it was silly and just kept going. You're in your world, you're doing your work. That's a whole other night for us to talk about how, the position of actually being a celebrity or, a figure and where that mentality is and how they really get you when you think you're doing something good or succeeding.
No, and kind of like what I was talking about in spaces the last couple of days, there's a lot of stuff going on right now in the news, and it's important stuff, but I always kind of also see it kind of as a distraction. because there's a trial that started on Monday with Ghislaine Maxwell. And, we're getting a lot of look, squirrel, and look here, and look here, and look there. And literally, outside of the Kyle Rittenhouse case, and I'm starting to develop a little bit of a theory on that, which is a whole nother show. But when you look at the Ghislaine Maxwell case, that started on Monday, and all the people that are tied to that, I think what we're going to end up seeing over the next few weeks, hopefully not months, but the next few weeks, is really going to shock the conscience. And I think that's another reason why the show with you tonight was so important, because you literally been in and around a lot of these people whose names we're probably going to see in the media, over the next few weeks. So you confront your dad and you hit him up with these questions, and he starts to give you pushback. And as a result of that, this is where things started to really destroy your personal life, and you ended up losing your kids. Can you kind of tell us what happened and what your dad and the Florida CPS kind of did to you, and explain that story to us?
Yeah, thank you. Every second without my children is absolutely terrifying and heartbreaking. My children were my life. I left everything in the industry in Hollywood to be a mom. And so when this started happening, I've when you're in a wealthy family or you're close with your family, you are taken care of. I was working towards a community learning farm, actually. And so my parents were supporting me through that. I was also in school for functional nutrition when all this occurred, to really help people and leave all the shenanigans behind. But, I started asking questions. I was also very weary because the way that they were handling money, they hired a financial a person to handle their finances about 2 years ago, which I ended up finding out horrible things about. I was contacted by a couple of her victims, where she targets men apparently, and commits financial fraud, identity theft, things like this. So as a 30-something-year-old woman, and her coming into my family and dealing with money and different things, for my parents, I was very encouraging to my dad that would be a great thing. But also, I have every right to question her and, what her motives are and what her experience is and things like that. So when I started doing that, I started getting some alarms going off within, and I started looking into some paperwork and different things. My home, my parents said, was a gift to me 4.5 years ago. And I was very appreciative of that. That was a start for us while I was developing the farm, like I said, for the future. And so leading up to this, I just started realizing that the amounts of money that they were giving me were, enough for gift tax exemption and different ways that they were doing creative accounting. And I actually asked my father weeks before this happened if they were trying to get a conservatorship on me. I just knew some of the ways that they were handling their estates and started seeing whose names they were in, and it wasn't in their names and stuff like that. And I was told I was crazy again, and I should just be glad that they're helping me and all of this. So, of course, being gracious, I said, okay, I'm going to trust you for a little bit. But I was asking the questions, and there was turmoil. Again, I was speaking up about the abuse as well personally. It's not just the questions I was asking. It was me actually finally speaking up about what I'd endured, and especially from my mother all growing up. And really wanting to be on my own, really wanting to provide for myself and my children. And, I've worked really hard for that, as well as being a stay-at-home mom. So we had an incident on Thanksgiving. I went to their home last year for Thanksgiving, where I tried to leave. I felt very weird there with the way my mother was being. She tends to, fluctuate in moods. She isn't diagnosed, but it's very manic and borderline and all of that kind of stuff. So I didn't want to engage in it anymore. I'd done that in the past, and my parents, unfortunately, are really addicted to trauma and drama. They haven't gotten help for their trauma. My brother, they were thrust right into the spotlight, which we know is what Hollywood likes to do, and contracts and all of that get you at a low point or a desperate place and offer you whatever they're offering, money and fame and all of that, under the guise of this is so your son won't die in vain. My father says that a lot. It's a line he was given to justify, this stuff. And so I was speaking up about that. I went to Thanksgiving and I decided to leave because I didn't want to engage. And my father started blowing up. They said that they were going to keep my daughter there and I could take my 2 sons home. And I said, this is crazy. They're my children. I'm leaving with my children. I'm a grown woman. Please let me leave and stop this, Dad. We can try again tomorrow. I'm just not going to engage in this. And then my mother comes out and starts filming me and they're saying this like script. And I said, I do not consent. You are framing me. Like, what are you all talking about? Let me go. And they continued to do this for about an hour and a half at our house. And finally, I pulled out my phone and started filming my dad and said, how do you like this? This is not what family does. What are you all doing? And he just kept saying, your children are terrified of you. You need help, all this. And I guess I should also add here that my parents have shopped me to therapists since I was 8 years old. There's also roles in families, black sheep, golden child, all this, if you look into psychology. And I was very much shopped since I was a child to therapists for this diagnosis somewhere. And amazingly, at 38 years old, there's still no diagnosis through forced rehab. They sent me to once, where we'll get into that at some point, the weird energy stuff and the Rothschilds and all of that I went through, and just to different therapists where they didn't find what they wanted. They were actually told that they need to take responsibility and that I wasn't the scapegoat for the family. So during this assault, I went to finally go take the phone from my mother, who then from there went to grab my hair, yanked it backwards, and bloodied my nose. I actually have basal cell cancer on my nose, everyone. I'm healing it with Rick Simpson oil. I hope everyone looks into that because it's an amazing, thing for all of us. So look into Rick Simpson oil. But she bloodied my nose and she actually bit me, on my arm and things with my baby in my arms. And my dad's going, Megan, give me your baby, while this is happening, instead of, stopping my mom. And so, that didn't really work for them. They actually tried through our trial to say that I assaulted them. And so, I left. And from then I said, while I have my therapist, I said, I'm sorry, I really want you guys to get help at this point in your life. After everything you've been through, and we've been through enough turmoil, it's been 38 years of this kind of relationship with me. And I really just wish you'd support me. And, I wish you'd get help for yourselves. You deserve it. You deserve peace. And this is clearly still affecting you. And my dad's health is, is not good. He just recovered from prostate cancer and different things. So, on the stand, he says that he didn't hear from me in the hospital while I'm, calling him and texting him and asking him if I can pick him up. And I'm telling him my doctor that will do IV treatments for him and vitamins and, all these things. And he's saying that, he never heard from me. So it's this continued drama. I know I got a little off from the question, but, it was just this kind of perpetual thing. So I was keeping my children and I and protecting, which we'll get into with CPS and how they do actually give children to abusers and shame the protective parents many times. And my father with his team, they filed to take my home, a forced sale on my home, which I never knew he was even half on the home. He told me it was mine. And he filed a forced sale weeks before he started a family court case. He went to my daughter's father, who was actually a donor. That's a different story. We had an agreement and he had kept to that for 9 years. And my mother wasn't happy with that when it happened. And they approached him and they hired his lawyer. They have the oldest law firm in Florida on family law, Nason Yeager, representing them and my daughter's father. They went behind my back, and when I wasn't answering and wasn't, seeing them and stuff, they started showing up at my home unannounced and started banging on all the windows and doors if I didn't answer. And
let me jump in real quick.
Yeah.
Right here, Megan, just to I'm reading the comments as I'm listening to you give the testimony. And Mike's here, so I'll be bringing Mike in.
Okay.
This will be a good way to segue him in here. But just to let people know, because people are kind of, seeing some comments, why is she saying this, about what's going on in her family? What I want people to understand is, we're going to get to ask Megan some questions about some of the stuff going on, behind the scene. We're going to have Mike that talks about some of the stuff that's going on, within Hollywood. He's, Hollywood insider, Hollywood reporter that was in it for 20 plus years. But the reason it's important that you guys understand what John Walsh and the Florida Child Protective Services did to Megan, why this story is so critical, because everybody says, well, it's them. How does this affect me? And this is what I'm going to explain to you guys. A lot of us as conservatives, a lot of us as patriots right now, we're not in line with what the government is telling us we're supposed to be doing, whether, it has to do with the vaccination or whatever the case may be. A lot of us, because of our conservative values, we don't line up with what the government wants. So what happens, you can get people to quote unquote call you a right-wing extremist, call you a domestic terrorist. People can start making these allegations against you, and then before you know it, whatever state you're in, Child Protective Services is there knocking at your door to do an investigation. And what better way for a tyrannical government, spiritual warfare going on, an evil government, dark, satanic people. There's all this crazy shit that we know that's going on. What better way than to take kids away from conservatives, and all of a sudden you find yourself in a situation, Megan. So understand why we're focusing on Child Protective Services right now. It's because you guys really got to understand how this works. Before I even heard of Megan's story, before I even came across Mike, several months ago, I was telling people, if you want to hurt conservatives and bring them to their knees, how do you do it? You do it with their children. If you use people's children as leverage against them, you will get the majority of people to do whatever you want. So you have to hear this story and understand how they operate. So this way you have the tools with you to recognize it and fight against it. So with that, let me bring in Mike and do an audio check in.
Real quick to that, I do want to point out, thank you for saying that. I do want to point out that, which we will get into, I was heavily discriminated. My case and my children were taken based on my religion, my choice to homeschool, my choice to not accept the COVID vaccine. And my father, even himself in court, shamed me and asked for a gag order 3 times, stating how I was associated with QAnon, how I was a domestic terrorist. And thank you for bringing that up, because it is very, very real, and the courts loved it.
I'm sure they did. Mike, let me do a real quick audio check. Can you hear me and Megan? Okay, we can definitely see you, but we can't hear you. I wish I was a better lip reader, because then I could probably know what you're saying. So I don't know if you maybe have some headphones. You want to try some headphones, but I can hear Megan fine. I just can't hear you. So your video's good. So what I'll do, Mike, is I'll move you back into the green room. Once you got your audio up and ready, just flag me down. I can see you. Give me a thumbs up, and I'll bring you back up with us. So you end up in the court scene, Megan, and what is the allegations that they used to actually remove your children from you? In the end, what was it that kind of sealed the deal?
Yeah, and this is something that is probably the most elusive and easiest to get away with, to take children. They said again that I had severe untreated mental illness, and that I was psychologically abusing my children, was what they ended up going with. That's the easiest way to take children. It's the lowest burden of proof. Also, that's a big deal. I want to say for the viewers, another reason why we are discussing this tonight is that everyone really wants to talk about trafficking and child trafficking and the elites and the satanic ritual abuse and Epstein and all of this. But I think that that's really detracting from the fact that we actually are the ones that need to do something. And the way that we do that is locally and as the people, because CPS is the largest trafficking agency in our country for children. That we hear these huge numbers, but do we ask where these children come from? I mean, we don't, even if you were to report your local, kidnapped children or missing children, it would not equal that number. They're not, this is a thing that my father came in with, this serial killer narrative from Otis Toole and Henry Lee Lucas, excuse me. And we see this in Gabby Petito's stuff. There's always a narrative there. So, that's really important to remember. And actually, I should, not to skip around, but I do want to answer something in the beginning. A big way that I started looking at this and questioning things was that I started looking at Henry Lee Lucas and Otis Toole. And I said to myself, I want to look at this from not the narrative having to do with my brother. I want to look at these people, and from there, that's when I really started to find specifically Henry Lee Lucas videos of him speaking on Otis Toole and their relationship and just kind of the goings on.
Real quick on that, Megan, just for those that maybe don't know the story of your brother's murder. If you can kind of let people know who Otis Toole is and his relationship to this whole story, and the same thing with Henry Lee Lucas, just so people understand who it is that you're talking about.
And again, I apologize. I didn't mean to skip from CPS to
this, but
I think that this is really important.
It is.
So so obviously my brother was taken from Sears 1981. Later, as we saw in the clips in the beginning, Otis Toole, once this character Joe Matthews came into it, which actually you find out when I looked into it, Joe Matthews was originally the man that was hired from outside the department, Hollywood Police Department, and he was hired to come in and interrogate my father and the different people. So he brags about keeping my father in interrogation for 9.5 hours, which my father had an alibi of being at work. He was not a huge suspect. So 9.5 hours is interesting. Then I started looking at the records, and many of the witnesses were asked via picture ID if my brother was the boy that they recognized being there that day. And initially, many of them said that they did not recognize the boy. He was not the one that they saw that day. And then they note in the records that they hypnotized them, and including my mother. So I started asking, the real thing before this that I started asking was, who hypnotized my mother? Who decided to hypnotize my mother? And I was, again, shamed. Oh, you're crazy. Oh, why are you even asking this? This is ridiculous. But I did notice that, and it all went back to Joe Matthews. So I looked into Joe Matthews' past, and he at the time was actually outside and teaching other law enforcement departments and things like that regarding nonverbal interrogation techniques. So I found that quite alarming, actually. I mean, I don't know if I'm the only one, but I did, especially when
there's a lot that I find alarming when it comes to Matthews. And correct me if I'm wrong. At some point, I don't remember how many years later, but at some point, your mom, Reeve is how you say your name, correct?
Reve.
Okay. So your mom, Reve, goes to your father and wants Matthews as a private investigator. Am I right with that so far? Okay.
That's the story. I never heard that. It's her story.
Well, the story that's out there. So
yeah, her.
When I look at the investigation that Matthews did, and for those of you that are unfamiliar, Matthews ended up coming later and re-looking at all the evidence in Adam Walsh's murder. And I did investigations. I worked homicides, for many years. And when I find out that Investigator Matthews goes and rechecks the vehicle of Otis Toole, however you say his name, and then finds a camera roll of film in the trunk. Let me tell you, I have worked with some great officers, but from time to time I've worked with some really dumb ones as well. I have never, when you're talking a homicide scene and vehicles, so many people looked through that vehicle, not just the investigators, but just the curious Georges. I can say, if I'm a betting man, I'm about 99.999% sure if there was a roll of camera film in the trunk of that vehicle, somebody would have found it that day. So the fact that this private investigator comes in, finds this roll of film that has all these alleged images, that have to do, I hate to say it, they're graphic, these graphic images that deal with the death of your brother. And then at the same time frame, Hollywood Police Department, and when we say Hollywood, we're talking about Florida Hollywood Police Department Chief, what was his name? I don't remember his name. I thought I might have had it. Chief Wagner. So the new Hollywood Chief Wagner comes in and says, okay, case is solved, case is closed, we're done, everything's under wraps. That doesn't sit right with me. And I really wish Mike's audio was working, because I'm sure he would have some stuff to say about that. But this is just kind of the deep, dark, twisted stuff that's going on within this case. And so once again, remember, this can happen to you. So I didn't mean to take you off track there, Megan, but it was just something that I remember when I was looking into this. I mean, aside from some other things, and there's some questions I had about some of the statements that your mom made, because as I'm looking at these videos, and I take into consideration, this is probably the 20th interview they've done, and so when you're not looking at the original statements, I'm honest when I look at these things, that can affect certain things. But just at the same token, I'm a father, and I'm the father of girls that are growing up adults, and I'm also the father of a 1-year-old, and I don't even want to imagine being in the situation that your parents were in. But I don't care if it was 5 years later, 10 years later, 20 years later. I just can't fathom the idea of me doing these interviews and not just being overwhelmed with emotions. And there was a particular interview, and I want to ask you this because I just want your take. I know your father had an alibi, but has it ever? And if you don't want to answer, I respect that. But during this whole ordeal, has it ever crossed your mind that even though your father may have had an alibi, or your mother may have had an alibi, that there's more to this story than what they're telling?
Absolutely. I mean, the case itself, you brought up the photos found, and actually there's been many people for the past 40 years that when you don't listen to the mainstream narrative that you're given, and you actually do look a little out of that realm, you do find that there are many people that, especially in the area at that time and still to this day, and also police officers that were involved at the time, or detectives like Hoffman, who really weren't buying the story at all. My mother's times didn't line up, my father. Well, and that's another thing I started doing, was I actually started looking at not only Henry Lee Lucas and Otis Toole, who then were speaking about being actually recruited by the CIA and being trained assassins to find their murder weapon on the scene when they arrived. And interesting enough, people will find that Bush Sr. was the governor of Texas at the time where Henry Lee Lucas was sentenced to death. He was on death row. And Bush was known for being very strict on pardons. He never pardoned anybody. And then days to maybe a week right before the scheduled execution of Henry Lee Lucas, suddenly Bush Sr. pardons him. Why would you pardon one of the worst nationally known serial killers? And then you see, again, him bragging about, we were chosen to be these ugly faces on the TV to cover up what was really going on. And I did see someone make a comment about, I believe it was Penny actually, make a comment about the finders, and that also plays in to it eventually. But there were a lot of questions. Even the picture of the face that Joe Matthews found later, a lot of these people that I was saying are still questioning, or still not believing the narrative to this day. They found pictures, the actual, that the face that we saw just there, the luminol, is actually only a portion of the full picture, the actual one photo. And when you look at the photo that's not zoomed in to make it look like a face, it actually looks like a boot mark. So, you know, it was things like that. And again, Joe Matthews came back in later and actually reminded my parents that he had interrogated them. And, you know, he got back involved, and he's profited greatly from that. You know, books and, you know, news spots and on Fox News and different things like that. So yeah, there was a lot to question. Even the head itself that was found, you know, my brother's head was found in Vero Beach, Florida, which is where my parents actually decided to move. And I was brought up in Vero Beach, and I always found that, and many others found that kind of odd that their son's head was found there, and then they decided to move there, which is also interesting. And satanic ritual abuse, you would say the head is in Vero Beach, Florida. So again, going back to the police departments, which this has a lot to do with, and a lot of us, you know, are realizing that police departments and the brotherhoods and different things like that are very interesting to look into, especially in all of this. So I actually called and started also looking at my father's bosses at the Diplomat Hotel. He was working at the Diplomat Hotel at the time, and he really brags about how he was a hotelier, and he was going back and forth to the Bahamas, which I do know. I was actually hit out in the Bahamas for a year because there was a hit put out on my life when I was 1 year old by NAMBLA, which is the North American Man-Boy Lovers Association. Did put a hit out on my life. And so they hid me out in the Bahamas, which again, I have interesting memories from being there and what occurred. But you know, I started.
Now, at 1 year old, obviously you're really small. So is this something that your parents explained to you happened, or is this like an actual recollection that you have? I mean, I would imagine you're too young for it to be your own memory. So is this something they told you?
Well, we would go back and forth when I was, you know, also younger after that, because of misconnections there. You know, my father actually even spoke about it. I believe it was last year, or the year before, during his speech at the DOJ. So it's pretty known. That's something he likes to say, that NAMBLA put a hit out on my life, which I also find interesting because people, that was only, you know, I'm 38, and for people to think that, you know, mob activity or hits on people's lives is like a passe thing, it's, you know, that's not that long ago, where we already have evidence of, you know, my life having a hit on it. My brother was rumored, you know, the big opposing narrative to the story that we've been told about Adam is that it was drug related, that my father was involved with nefarious people in Hollywood, and he was refusing to, I don't know, pay a ransom or go along with something that they wanted, and so they put a hit out on my brother's life. So, you know, again, I wasn't there, but then I started looking into it, and I actually called and have known throughout my life his boss, John Monahan's son. And so I called him and was talking with him, and I was asking him, you know, what was the lifestyle like? You know, what was your dad like in the day? And the Diplomat Hotel, I mean, it was Hollywood, Florida, the Diplomat Hotel. They had Liza Minnelli, the Doors, you know, all these people going through. You can only imagine the scene there. You know, my dad used to brag about being a cabana boy and a playboy, you know, and all of this. So I start looking, you know, asking his son, you know, what was that like growing up? What was your father like? His father was very much a father figure and a mentor to my father, and really brought him in and started grooming him into this lifestyle that they were living. And so I started asking him, which actually there was a rumor our whole lives growing up that John Monahan's wife died. She did die. She fell down a flight of stairs, and we were told that she tripped on her nightgown and fell down a flight of stairs. Now I asked Tommy, you know, what his take was, and he said I was in the kitchen eating breakfast with the nanny, which is another big theme, and that's something I started talking to my dad about, and he did not like. You know, was these men that go out, they say that they're, you know, doing all this good, or these you know, these influential or these big you know, personality men, when they're really, you know, maybe doing nefarious and different things behind the scenes, and then their wife and children are at home and that affects them. And the wives start, you know, being upset, or they turn to drinking or something like that. And then the men say, what's wrong with you? You know, you have the house and the country club and everything you could want, you know, like, why, look, you must be crazy. Something's wrong with her, you know, if they start talking or, you know, anything like that. And I've seen my dad help his friends whose wives have done that or were upset about their infidelities or things that they knew on the inside that they were doing. And even use the sheriff to harass them and silence them, you know, when I was growing up. So, of course, you don't realize that. They put it in terms of she's mentally, oh, we don't know what's going on with her suddenly. We're very afraid, you know, all these things. And then you find the truth out when you get older. But, you know, back to John Monahan, I you know, was asking about Tommy, and he said, yeah, I was eating breakfast with the nanny in the kitchen. I heard a thud, and I looked over, and my mom was laying at the bottom of the stairs in a pool of blood. And I got up and I looked, and my father was standing at the top of the stairs. And that had always been a rumor again. And, but, you know, we're not allowed to talk about that. And then I said, well, what was your father's relationship with the Hollywood Police Department? And he said, oh, they had a great relationship. It was a barter system. It was, you know, I scratch your back, you scratch mine. You know, if someone got caught, you know, drinking and driving or something, they'd offer them a suite for the weekend, or, you know, an invitation to one of the celebrity parties or something, and it would go away. So they had this camaraderie, and they knew each other well. Also, the Hollywood Police Department is directly across the street from the Sears department stores, ironically, as well. So, you know, it's a big picture, you guys, and this is just an intro, and there's a lot to cover. But, you know, just as far as looking at those details and the lifestyle and what they were leading, and that also leads me to what was a big deal and what people don't really realize is, you know, I was looking next for the deposition of James Campbell, and some people may know who James Campbell is, but most people will not. James Campbell was actually the 20-something-year-old living in my parents' home at the time. He actually moved out a few weeks before Adam's disappearance, and he was living in the home with my parents and having an affair with my mother. My father had met him at the Diplomat Hotel when he was about 11 or 12 years old, and then when he was about in his early 20s, he moved in with my parents. And Adam would say, I have two daddies. You know, one that goes to work and one that takes care of the house. James is very, you know, quoted for saying, you know, I'd go to work and I'd come home and, you know, get Adam ready for bed. He would sleep with me sometimes when he was scared, you know, different things like that, you know, that came into play with James Campbell. So I was looking for those depositions of his take on it, which actually came up in Sears case. For those that aren't familiar, my parents actually attempted to sue Sears department store after my brother was found, and they ended up dropping the case because of James Campbell's deposition and the judge allowing it to, you know, they tried to get it thrown out and insisted, and they kept it in and said, the judge said, this is absolutely vital to the case. Sears was actually able to prove that my mother did not leave my brother for 5 or 10 minutes. She left him, he was alone in the department store for over 90 minutes, actually. And then James Campbell's, you know, deposition, really notes my parents' cocaine and marijuana use, their, you know, the domestic issues that were going on. He even states that I wouldn't be surprised if Adam actually ran away. You know, I moved out because I was, you know, trying to get my life together in hopes that Reve and Adam would join me eventually.
There's definitely a lot to pack with him, and I definitely had heard that story about the affair. I mean, I heard a couple different, you know, variants of it, that it was something that your dad was aware of and okay with. I heard it was done behind his back. There's a lot to definitely unpack with that. With that, Mike just messaged me. It looks like his audio is working, so I'm going to bring him up and do an audio check. And
he's the technical guy. I'm the one in trauma, just trying to get it out. But he's the articulate one.
Check 1, 2.
Okay, we can hear you, Mike. So
Can you hear me?
I can hear you fine. Your video's a little spotty, but you're off. Don't worry about it, man. audio things happen. You actually, oh, and your video is good too now. You were looking 1080 solid, man. And we're getting the people from the chat saying they can also hear you. Well, now we see your room.
You can hear me okay?
We can hear you fine, and there you are. Okay, now we got you.
That's why it's feeling.
Okay, no, we can see you now. We can see you perfect, so we're good. So real quick, just to let everybody know. So this is Mike. Mike's been tied into Hollywood, like I said, as an insider reporter for the last 20, 25 years or so. Mike, real quick, you want to just kind of let everybody know a little bit about yourself so they know who they're watching on the screen?
My name is Michael Earl Bass. I'm from Antioch, Illinois. The same place that Kyle Rittenhouse is from. Oddly enough, although no one's ever heard of him. I've asked everybody. It's a small town. It's pretty like a dark town. But then worked in Hollywood for 25 years. Worked with, collecting deep state checks. And, got to a pretty high level, I guess. I sold a lot of really successful shows. That one show sold to 30 countries. And it was the highest rated show for the Reels channel for 3 seasons. And then once you get to a level, and it's weird, Megan and I, we both had a handshake deal with William Morris Agency, which is really weird. That doesn't happen, and usually that's not a good thing. You want to contracts these days, no one's ever going to sneak and take your intellectual property. So that's kind of the story of my life. And then I was able to work my way, went broke and came back to Chicago, where I'm from. And I knew I could navigate, just destroy just save up a bunch of data and information and expose it, and then doing a bunch of research. And I met this lovely young lady 7 weeks ago on the phone, and we've been doing some crazy research. The things we found, it's unreal, my man. I mean, and it's been great. I got to tell you guys, I was telling Megan this earlier today. For the first, what is it? I thought you think you know a lot, and then but with Megan, what we've learned, 50% of what I've learned now, what we do know now, and what we're exposing, is more than it's more than 50% of what I did before. It's really phenomenal. All right, so it's just been an amazing story.
So real quick, Mike, just so you know, your audio's coming in and out for me, so I'm catching every couple words, and it looks like the audience is having the same thing.
Let me see if I can.
So, yeah. So I'll move them back into the green room, and we'll try to push on Megan. We'll probably have to do a second show and bring Mike on to get all these things covered. So.
Yeah, there's a lot of facts and stuff. We're just trying to start, introducing people to kind of the overall. I did see in the chat someone say, what would be the motive for this operation or things. And, that's what we're getting to. My father is really, he's put a lot out there, and, he's been this face for these, these causes and this cause specifically. But really what we're seeing is a lot of incentives, kind of, almost like a paid opposition, I guess, for our terminology here. I know everyone gets that here. A paid opposition, if you will, and to kind of, hit people with the emotion. Like my brother's case, like we said, really affected people. It really gets you with that emotional, not manipulation, but, if it's not true, then it's manipulation. But, really that kind of gets out of, you don't question really after that for the most people, because of the emotion, you wouldn't question it. But
what everybody has to understand with that too is if you go back in time, I had to do it as research because, like I said, I was too young to remember. When I went back and started researching it, when you look at what John Walsh brought, with America's Most Wanted and all these other things, that literally is what created the emotion nationwide, and I would argue probably globally, but definitely nationwide, that started pushing all these NGOs of, for the Missing Children Foundation, the Clinton Foundation. All these things were based off of that story that got thrown into the limelight that emotionally made everybody a part of it. It's what got the financing going. It's what, ultimately led to Amber Alert, all these things that we now see, all these NGOs, which are now actually the ones that are perpetrating these crimes. They're perpetrating the missing children. I mean, I could go on, on my own, and maybe I will do it, here in the next, few weeks. When I started looking at some of these NGOs and the money of who funds them and where it comes from, and it's a big circle. So when people are saying, what's the motive? Understand this was the seed back in the 80s that just kind of fed what we have. All these organizations we have today, this is where it started. This is the root case. It's kind of what Mike, if he was here, what he would kind of explain to people. This is why this story with your family is so important, because it got everything spawned from it.
And who also was part of starting that was Ernie Allen. There's a gentleman, Ernie Allen, who, he was actually in Louisville, Kentucky at the time of my brother's disappearance. And he was trying to start the first convention ever for child protection. And that was really focusing on runaways, abductions, exploitations, all of this. And that's where he brought together top experts, my parents, as well as where this convention really held the space for these people to come together and start approaching legislation and changing legislation and getting funding for these things. We also found a nonprofit for runaway aid out of Fort Lauderdale with my father's name on it that was prior to my brother's abduction. So that is indicating that they were getting funding for a nonprofit that was dealing with runaway aid. And now then my brother's abducted. I thought John Walsh got into the kid business, if you will, once, that tragic day happened and started, everything with his son going missing. And that before that he was a hotelier. So that didn't add up either. And yes, and actually another big question that I started asking him about, let's go back to Laura Silsby real quick to stay on these, the stuff that people can really relate to or know about. Laura Silsby, many of us know, was in Haiti in 2010. She was arrested and accused of kidnapping 33 children. They actually were not orphans. They had families. And Hillary Clinton went down and got her off the hook, intervened, and was involved in that. I started remembering that my brother and my father went to Haiti and bragged about going down there doing humanitarian work. And then that struck me to remember Hank Asher, who's one of my dad's good friends. Hank is very involved in, actually, I should say Hank Asher is the creator of LexisNexis search engine. He also created Matrix, which goes back to, Mike will get into that. I won't ruin his spot, but it goes into a lot of nefarious things.
Pause that thought real quick too,
yeah.
Megan, just so everybody knows that's wondering, what's this LexisNexis? It's what 99% of us use in law enforcement, and it tells us pretty much everything about you. What utility bills you have, what cell phone numbers you've had, what social medias you have, what cars. It literally gives us an entire life's profile on you. So when you hear the word LexisNexis and this guy's involvement with it, just understand that it's something that has to do with everything about your life. But please continue, Megan. Sorry for interrupting.
Yeah, it does. And that really, thank you for saying that, because that really touches on databases and this big brother and federalized policing. And that's what, again, going back to the question, why would this happen? Why would they do this? And that's a big reason, not only funding and NGOs, but also federalized policing. My dad and them rang in facial recognition and all of that we'll get to in a second. But going back to Haiti and Hank Asher, I did remember that. And Hank was also a huge donor to research hospitals like Johns Hopkins and Mayo. And, my dad's always been really interested in like stem cells and life extension, like all these, he loves this medical stuff and all of that, but that's for another time. But I did start looking into it, and they love to brag about themselves and what they do. So I found articles of Hank Asher on the Huffington Post, self-published, bragging about he and my father and his son-in-law and my brother taking private planes from South Florida in 2010 and flying over to Port-au-Prince, which is, I'm sorry, I didn't say that earlier, where Laura Silsby was, and participating in med tents. and helping with med tents. So that really kind of struck a nerve with me. I asked my research team to kind of look up the vicinity from Epstein Island to Haiti to the Bahamas. And that's an interesting line in the waterways, if you will. And so then we also have a case down in South Florida around the same time involving judges, profiting and having a racket set up of children being medevaced over from Haiti to South Florida. So all of that really turned me the wrong way. I did start asking my dad about that, and that was, again, another one of those, what are you talking about? I gotta go, you're crazy kind of thing. So, which many people find alarming now when we talk about it like this. So, looking into that, Hank Asher definitely was involved with him. I brought up Ernie Allen a second ago about the conventions and whatnot. And this goes back to the money, funding, NGOs, all of this. They started the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. He then went on to develop the sister organization, which is the International Center for Missing and Exploited Children, which on the board is Richard Branson and a lot of nefarious players there. Internationally, which we can only imagine in the context of what we talk about. And then I was watching Ashton Kutcher testify and his new efforts with Thorn and everything. And what do I see? Half of a face sitting next to him. And I realized that that's Ernie Allen. And I remembered a huge scandal about, internally in my parents speaking when it happened, about Ernie Allen actually getting in a lot of trouble while he was with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children and actually having to be escorted out of his office and asked to leave even. So we ended up finding out, and Mike was the one who actually located it on the National Center's own website itself, was their 2019 self-audit. And I'm skipping around. I brought Ashton Kutcher up and Ernie Allen because here he's, taken out. We see like Laura Silsby, they're, found out, they're asked to leave and handled, and then they're put somewhere else, right? And that also goes with Hank Asher and the databases, because if you look into Thorn, that's, again, these huge databases, facial recognition, cataloging children, and it's always this guise, which CPS uses also, and our president is using and everything, of the best interest of, which we really need to question when we hear that now. It should be alarming when you hear the best interest of. So, so here we see these players going through, they're taking their databases and, these things that they want to instill or profit from or whatever, and going throughout, and it's key players. So, that was really interesting to me, and was asking questions about it. So there's a lot of nefarious things. Mike has great layout and everything of that. Again, I'm more of the fill in the blanks and really tell the nuances of and how I got here, and what I was questioning, what I found personally. And I've just been very lucky to have them come on and really be able to do the research work for everyone else. But going back to that, we did find a 2019 self-audit that was up on their website. And I think many people will find this interesting, that they actually receive $38 million a year of taxpayer money. They are a 501c3. So the narrative to most people is that they are this government agency, or they are the go-to, which actually they are. Any reports that come in are not sent to, you're not told to call, the Department of blah, 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 some government agency to handle this. You're told to call the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. And they brag about the millions of reports that they get sent every year. And so how are they actually handling that? And it being a clearinghouse and a database, how effective is this really? And this is our taxpayer money. This is $38 million to a 501c3 that is actually exempt from the Freedom of Information Act. They also receive $18 million from corporate private donors. And when we look at those, we see companies right off the bat, Facebook, Airbnb, TikTok, and even L Brands, going back to, Les Wexner, Richard Branson, this kind of a group. So, it's very interesting. And actually during coronavirus, I had mom friends call me and say, my 13-year-old is being approached online on Facebook. What should I do? I said, hey, call the hotline, because that's what my dad told me to say. Call the hotline, and they would actually call back weeks later to check on the report, and they would tell them, we don't have any report. We don't know what you're talking about. I also told my
Absolutely
father.
disgusting.
They had, yeah, it is. I even had mothers calling me upset about their children's school pictures being taken, and they were notified that they were put in a database without a signature of consent, without being informed. And I've been proud of my moms. They've called and kind of really spoken up and questioned them, and the companies they're of course batting it off onto each other, and the National Center is not taking responsibility for that, but now they're having to address it. So again, going back to that, voices really matter, and we can actually do something if we start on a fundamental level and at the root.
God First brought up a really good comment, so I threw it up on the screen so everybody can see it. With these 501(c)(3)s that are going on, and God First put they're exempt from FOIA. You guys actually learned this in the process. If you can tell us a little bit more about that, how you found that out.
Yeah, just researching. They're very blatant about it. They deny when they're requested. And I don't think that they're really requested. That's what's so amazing actually about this whole thing, is how they have just been risen up, not questioned at all, because it's children. It's, we're putting out this narrative, this is what we're doing. So they're not questioned. And I think for us to really bring it up, and for, the masses to kind of be at this point, many people didn't even know what a FOIA was, or and what the Freedom of Information Act was, up until recent times, and it's great that we're all talking about it and learning these things. But I think it's just a matter that, people didn't really look at that. And that's CPS as well. There's no audits, there's no, oversight. And especially when you're a 501(c)(3, you're a charity,
No, let's do this, Megan, because I really want to cover some of this stuff, but I don't want to overlap it, because I really want to get Mike's take on it, because he sent me some great info, but I want him to be here when he covers it. So we'll do a part 2 to that. So before we wrap this up with your dad and your brother going to Epstein's Island, and I know there was another interview to Haiti. Sorry, I'm reading and looking at the same time. No, I appreciate it. With going to Haiti, there's something that your brother had shared with you that you disclosed in another interview. Are you comfortable with talking about that a little bit before we wrap this up and get ready for a part 2?
I think maybe that can be in the part 2.
Okay.
It wasn't Argentina, and it's a very touchy thing. I think what I would like to end on this is, for part 2, really my point in coming out, we can really find out, like, we need to know the roots of these issues, or how it started. But in pertaining to the masses and currently what we're dealing with as a society today, again, we really need to realize the issues within CPS and how this is happening to traffic our children, how it is highly incentivized now that we're talking about the National Center, and and how that works. CPS is a complete system in itself. It's systemically wrong and ingrained to profit from children, and to take them, and it's happening all over. Children go missing out of CPS, and they're not reported, but money's still collected on them. Children are murdered, sexually abused, and where's the National Center and John Walsh talking about that? They like to give out the statistics and say that they're helping all these missing children, but why aren't we looking at that? Why aren't we tackling something like a systemic issue that we can really do something about, that would correct a lot of the missing issues, or the stuff that, kind of is the trickle down effect that they address today? And also, what about that $38 million? Why don't we put it into local efforts towards actually, we know between 24 and 48 hours are critical once a child or a person goes missing. And what is a database really doing that's pushing information out to other agencies? Enough of this protocol and paperwork and everything, which we're seeing becoming huge issues in a lot of different areas of life and judiciary and the system these days. So for me, I really want to, you know, get this out and get the story out so people realize that, but I really do want people to start, you know, really researching and looking into it themselves as far as the hundreds of thousands of loving parents in this country that are fighting every second. You know, I grew up in TV. You know, I did see a comment about she's a great actress or something like that. You guys have to remember that I grew up, I was born in the spotlight, if you will, in front of a camera. And, you know, this has been a mission. I've been speaking out about CPS and family court corruption prior to them taking my children, which was also another great reason for them to go along with this and do it. So I just want to keep that focus. And when we do part 2, you know, we will get to more of that, and you'll see clips of how they took my children and how, you know, the system works with that. But I want to keep that focus for our viewers, because that's really the source of trafficking, and that's how it starts, and children are shipped out. And we're not really asking those questions. We're talking about the trafficking. We're saying we want to do something about it, but we start local. We start auditing CPS. We start demanding that. We start holding these organizations, like we're saying 501c3s. You start in CPS with a department, and they do, you know, you have a trial or the judge makes an order, but then it's all sifted out to private entities like Devereaux, Department of Child and Family Services. And these are all, again, not government agencies. These are private agencies that, you know, when your children or the children that are taken from one place and transported by somebody to another place, and money is collected on them. These children are put in the foster care system, and the foster homes are really foster prisons. They are drugging our children up. And it's not just the trafficking that we have to save our children from. It's big pharma, it is academia, and all of these things then, you know, go into the future of our children, as well as, you know, and CPS is great at that. They take the children in. If they diagnose children or find a disability, they get more money. And we'll get into that, you know, when it's appropriate. But I really just want people to start, you know, looking at that and questioning that, because unfortunately the narrative, big theme is narrative versus truth. And the narrative that most people believe is that it is a good thing, and it's a good agency. And really horrifically, it's the exact opposite. The children are being taken from protective parents and put in the hands of abusers and profited from.
And I will speak to that with 100% confirmation, because in my career, and I shared this with Megan and Mike last night, you know, I've responded to, unfortunately, hundreds of calls where CPS was coming out to a home, whether it was to do an investigation or whether it was to remove the children. And in 14 and a half years, only 2 times did I ever sign the form authorizing that to take place. So just so everybody knows, at least with California, and I think this applies to most states, CPS themselves cannot take your kids. They need to have the authorization from a court and a judge, or they got to get law enforcement to sign off on it. So please understand that as you guys start to learn these things. But I'm telling you, CPS is not good. I would have them come to homes. And I know we see it, because it's like everything else that the government does is they paint this beautiful picture of how we're going to go and extract kids from these horrible things and put them into these great, it sounds like a great idea, just like the red flag laws, see the connection. But what you don't realize is the kids that should be removed from homes are the cases that you see on the news all the time. They get reinvestigated, they get dismissed, and all of a sudden we find out those kids get murdered or killed by their parents. And you ask yourself, well, why didn't they do something about it? But what you don't hear is these stories like Megan. You don't hear about these other parents who literally had their kids, quote unquote, legally stolen from them because somebody with some piece of paper said that they were smart enough to take away their kids. And I'm telling you, I had CPS workers that wanted me to sign the paper to have people's kids taken away from them because they did corporal punishment. And I'm not talking about they went, you know, legitimately beat the kid. I'm talking about the kid said, you know, F you to mom, and kid got smacked in the mouth. And they wanted me to sign the paper to strip the kids away. This is what DPS does, you know, and I can tell you guys, Megan's story is one of hundreds of stories that have just never been heard. And I agree with you 100%, Megan. There has to be an audit into CPS because I don't even want to think about how many parents right now have been separated from their kids unjustly and the things that these kids are going through in these foster care facilities. And I'm not going to knock every foster parent. I've met great foster parents. But what I'm saying is understand that there is a plague of evilness that understands this system and all the stuff that I've been seeing in the chat that everybody's afraid of. Understand that evilness knows how to exploit the system. They know how to legally get their hands on these kids, and then before you know it, they're two sheets to the wind, and nobody knows whatever happened to them. So 100%. Thank you for sharing your story with us, Megan. Um, you and your family will always be in my prayers. We will do part two. I'll get with Megan and Mike tomorrow and figure out.
He will step up and, I called Sean McMillan. I called him and put a call in. I tried him several times over the past few days, and I did get through finally to his assistant. He was on a conference call. So
help the viewers understand this is a civil proceeding. When you say arraignment on charges, what do you mean by that?
that's the thing, is that we have, there are real neglect and abuse situations in our country, and we have a criminal justice system for that. That's how we should be handling and addressing these things. And unfortunately, we've allowed this system to exist that is civil. It's kangaroo court, and there is no law behind it. They're doing whatever they want. As you see, no one's allowed in once it gets to TPR, which should be the most transparent point of the process. Truly, we need accountability. We need transparency. We need auditing. We need to be able to do better. We need to change the perspective. We've been given a narrative.
Because there's no jury of your peers, right, in this case?
There's no jury of your peers at all.
Notice when the hearing is supposed to be public, and notice that the DCF and their lawyers went in there and had, for some reason, get that case, get your case closed, not allowing your supporters or the public to see what's going on. How do you feel about
And then manipulate it, everyone involved, including my father, manipulates it into that they're scared and, there's something, dangerous here, there's something whatnot. No, if you're doing what's right, then you don't have fear about that kind of stuff. I've had to walk into this with all my dad's buddies and all of this kind of thing, and I have to walk in there and like giddy, and it's incredible. So I just, it is what it is at this point.
So you feel like
whether we want to do something as the people about it or not, if we're okay with this or not.
I'm sorry, did you feel like part of the process went on without you even being in there? Because we could see through the doors, they were in there talking without you.
They can have their secret meetings. They can, they put the white boys on. They do all this, and they can do that. And they're all working together. They all take oaths to the same, entity. And it's really wild. They're all working.
And you were locked outside for that part of the proceeding, right?
Yeah, they're going in and all talking, and she's saying that there's irreconcilable differences, and guys, it's a mess, and people need to research, and people need to wake up, and we really, if people aren't realizing through this, then I don't know what it will take.
Yep, I need to wake up. So what's the next step for it on Friday?
Court on Friday, 10 a.m. here at the Vero Beach Indian River County Courthouse. It's an arraignment and pre-trial for the termination of my parental rights, which we should never even be discussing these things in America.
They're not even mentioning reunification at all?
Everyone that's involved in this kind of system and being victimized by it knows that, they tell you, oh, we're doing the case plan, and great, that, different stuff, which we have seen in this, but I have spoken up about that. I've been very vocal in grace and truth, that we've been doing everything on the case plan. I even just told the judge that we have a half of an evaluation that's parental, and they never came to do a home study on Wednesday because they knew that they were planning to take my baby, and they had all of this a day later.
Right.
And they could have easily, peacefully come in, seen the home study, saw that I had a baby, addressed that under their law,
of having a baby, combining it with the other case, and saying, you know what, we see the truth here. We are working, and let's get this done with. You know, let's get these children back.
Right.
That's all we've ever asked.
The best interest of the children, and you and everybody that's hearing me, no harm to no one. We just want the truth out there, right?
Yeah.
You want your babies back.
Yeah, I just,
you want your babies
the truth
back.
back. This is not just about Megan Walsh
No.
and John Walsh.
About DCF.
This is about CPS and DCF in our country, stealing our children. And no one in there is going to intimidate me or make me feel like I am wrong about that. We all see it. We all know. That's gaslighting. That is part of abuse. If we're expected to ignore all of this all over our country, cases and cases and cases come forward, and they have been. Because I've been an advocate for years now. We hear it all day long. And while we're standing here, children are being taken from loving families, being either put into foster care and drugged up, or they're being taken from beautiful families and homes that love them and put it and adopted out into the system, and all from London. These are commodities in this
And all of these children are abused once they get into DCF's custody.
Oh my gosh, the murder, the pedophilia, and yes,
Lost children.
we're saying it. We're saying it.
Saying
You know
that
what?
loud. Yep.
The public has been given these notions, and they've been given a narrative to mock it. And if you are at that point where you hear pedophilia, or you hear murder, or you hear that someone's children have been taken, and you want to work towards finding what's wrong with that person or shaming your fellow citizen, then you have a problem, truly, at this point. This is real in our country, this is real in our lives, and this is real in our families. And it's destroying our families and our children, which are our future.
Thank you, Megan. We appreciate it.
You're
And we wish you the
welcome.
most
Thank
of
you all
luck.
for coming.
And we're gonna stand behind you, and we're gonna try to get more people behind you, and behind all, and stand up for all the children, not just in Florida, but in this whole country.
All.
This whole system needs to be redone.
Yes.
And I hate that you're going through this, but Lord, you're a strong woman, and
Thank
we're
you.
behind you.
Thank you. I want my brother Adam to be able to rest in
Yes,
peace.
we care
For
about
whatever
Adam
is the truth of that to come forward. I want the people to have time and space to look into that. The records are all online. They are all public, and it's been 40 years.
Look
And
it
we
up.
have- Yes, look it
up.
up.
Start
and look
researching,
into it.
people.
Don't believe us,
Because we are
research.
we are actually going to help protect missing and exploited children and children that are in these situations that we need. You know, my parents started in a certain way, and we are here to actually correct the issue. We can't have this anymore. And children are my life. And
Perhaps
my
this
children are.
is the 2.0 and get it right this time.
Absolutely.
I hope
And I
so.
have a lot of hope, and I know
A
that
lot of
there's
faith.
tons of us coming together. And that's all I've ever asked from the beginning, is for the people to come together and use your voice.
Wake up.
That's it. That's
Use your
it.
voice.
It's so
Speak up.
simple. We want all these bigger things that we have to do. And we don't have to. We just use our voice and we come together, united.
So keep out there supporting.
We use grace, we use truth, and we get justice. That's it.
So we'll
Come
There's
together.
better ways. There's better ways, and there's so many
And we
people
can't
these
help
days that
family-
want to get involved and want to be better.
And we can't help
Families that
families
do
that do
need
need
help.
help.
We need a system that's there for those families, that the goal is to help the whole family and get those children reunified if possible,
Absolutely.
to give the services.
Absolutely.
Yes.
These are adult issues.
Not-
We should not, it's not this, we care about children. No, that's preying on our children. You take care of the parents. If somebody can't pay a bill that month, you help them. And then you help them in a supportive way to make sure that they can the next month. You know, whether it's a job or something, there's so many better ways to be helping and supporting our families, our precious families, and our sacred children in this country and all over the world. So I really have been so appreciative of all the people that have come forward, especially people within the system. There are good people in the system that want to do right. It's systemic at this point, and we need people to stand forward, come forward, be doing better, and speaking out about what they have witnessed, as well as children that have grown up in the system.
Right. If you're working for any of these places, you can reach out to any of us, independent or whatever journalists, and we will keep you confidential, and we will try to investigate anything we can
Yes.
with our means that we have.
Yes, we have
Which are
had
limited,
people-
but
we've
we'll
had
try.
People drop off this case, and there are people involved in this case that are not okay with it. They said, you know, we don't even feel like we're protecting children anymore. And to me, that's a victory.
Yeah.
That's a
Megan, what
victory.
do you have to say to people out there now that have going through what you're going through? We've had hundreds of
Let me get you with these.
Give them some hope, some advice on what they need to do.
Well, it's time. There's a lot of people, there are parents that have been fighting for this for decades.
Yeah, we gotta keep the Freemasons simple.
Yeah.
Do they have your?
Because that's a part of our problem is the Freemasons. These ladies, can you tell us why you're here today? You're in support of, and oh yeah, why are you here today? Megan Walsh, yes, and all the children that are being illegally taken, right? And you?
I'm here for Megan Walsh, and I'm here for saving the children, which is so important. Our children are our future, and if we can't fight for them, then we have nothing left.
I agree with you. Thank you so much. Thank you guys for standing behind Megan. I know you have been for a long time, and it's appreciated. Standing up for all the children. I know you've been working on that for a while. I know you're working on things, and we appreciate you guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, just make boxes on. Don't worry, we're gonna wait for you. Says it's connected. Okay, so let's go back into our YouTube. Let's go back into our YouTube. Off my camera. Okay, we can go into your settings right here. Okay. Oh Lord. Going in to fight for her child, and we're please work on that. Right now. Great, sounds great.
So for introduction, everybody, my name is Ryan Blade. I'm the owner of Indie River News Comics. So here in County. I have not been directly covering the story, but whenever there are press conferences, I have come out. If you want the PGI Now podcast, the Facebook page, John Karapi had live streamed law enforcement taking Megan's child from her. So it's turned out to be a very interesting case from what. I'm gonna probably start live streaming when Megan gets here.
Yeah.
But first thing you're going to want to interview is John Karapi. And by the way, for everybody watching, if you are on a desktop computer, I want you or a laptop, do me a favor, look up TGI Now podcast. If you really want to watch, follow up with this TGI Now podcast, I just want to give a shout out to Crosstalk News. I happen to know one of the co-hosts of that program, Ed Saul.
He would be, yeah, he thought she would be, she thought he'd be proud of her for looking further into the case because there is a lot of questions around that case, but no, he, like the police often do, he got offended and started taking everything for her.
Well, and the biggest thing is that, again, nobody's covering it. And so, I've been living in this town for 35 years. I have friends in the media that I've sent the messages to.
They're scared, probably.
Even happened, and nobody will touch it. They're like, oh, interesting. Do you know more about it? I'll send them videos about it, and next thing you know, I don't hear nothing.
I see a huge problem, and I'm by far not alone. I was an advocate speaking out against coalition, Citizens and Bikers for a Brighter Future, and several others are here with us today.
So Megan, tell me why are you here today?
I'm here actually for a final hearing or to move towards termination of my parental rights through CPS in Indian River County here against my family.
Why protest?
Because we have a huge national issue and actually a global issue dealing with corruption within CPS and DCF, taking our children unlawfully and having no incentives to return them. And we really need to address this issue, especially this county has really been coming forward with a lot of these cases. And sadly, at this point, it is a playbook for this system, and it is not in the best interest of our children or our families.
So what do you hope to get accomplished?
I hope to, first of all, to shine truth on this situation and this system that truly needs to be addressed immediately.
Okay, and then I should be able to, I guess we're live. We're live. Okay. Okay, so sorry about that. Okay, this is a little different than normal, my friends. So we're on live here on YouTube, and I have a very special guest today. But before I even do this, I'm going to share this to Facebook. So let me kick that out. I'm going to share this to Facebook, and this is going to be a little different than normal. Okay. Bear with, bear with. Okay, and we are live now, but we're gonna have to wait because my audience on Facebook now has been warned. All right, so here, hold on. I'm gonna have to have this whole beginning cut off. Okay, I know what to do. Hold on. I'm sorry about this.
Don't be sorry. We're all trying to figure it out these days with all the technology and connecting and
I got all these people writing me right now, like, I can't see you. Where are you? I'm like, YouTube. YouTube. Okay, so guys, we're live. We're a little bit random right now. This is not the norm. In description, there's going to be how to get the book. There's going to be how to get a consultation on the website. There's going to be all the options that you can have to get help. But I have a very special guest today, which I am not going to be unveiling just yet, but shortly we will be. And I want to say hi to anybody that can see me on here, as I cannot yet see you, but I will be shortly. Just waiting to load here. Oh, actually, we have they cannot see you, just so you know, not just yet. But today's live is going to be absolutely amazing because all the work that I've been doing for now almost 15 years is literally coming to an explosive exposing head. So I'm just kind of waiting to get onto my own YouTube channel now so I can watch you guys in the chat. Now, originally I was going to do this on Facebook, but I did not want to be censored. And I want to give everybody the opportunity to not only get to enjoy what I'm about to expose today, like this piece of crap here, the upstate judge who favored abusive fathers over protective mothers, Anthony McGinty, but now we're going to be exposing somebody who's known globally. And this is absolutely just really takes me deep in my heart right now, because this is the work that we've been doing for close to 15 years, trying to expose and abolish the family court and expose family court and CPS, which I call, you guys know, child predator services or child pedophilia services, which they try to call child protective services, which we know it's absolutely not protective. So I'm going to wait for more people to kind of get on in the chat here because we're going to be doing two things today. Anybody that's live today, so go ahead and tell your friends, anybody that's live today, you will have an opportunity at a certain point to win. And let me see if I can pull this up for you, to win my best-selling book, get out of here, Punished for Protecting the Injustice System of Family Court. I'm back. And you'll have an opportunity to win this, an autographed copy, which I will send directly to you. So you'll have there's going to be one winner on that. And then there's going to be a winner that will win a free consultation for help with your case. So make sure that you stay on and listen to this entire live video, and also that you get that opportunity to win. So go ahead and tell your friends. Now I'm able to actually hop on YouTube right now. So I'm actually getting on here where I can see the people that are in the chat. So go ahead and say hi to me, because I'm going to be looking for two winners today in chat. And I'm going to select them pretty much by your comments in chat. That's how I'm going to make my selection, and to see who's going to get the book, and then who's going to get one free. And it's got to be two separate people. One person can't win both. It's going to be two separate people, but I want to see who can, who's going to win today. Now we have pinned in chat. Okay. And I see people hopping on here, and I want to also give hi from Connecticut. Hello. I think I see. Yeah. Hi, Laura. How are you? Hi, Darlene. Let me see. Hannah, how are you? So I'm glad you guys are on. If anybody's on Facebook as well, if you guys don't mind just letting people know on Facebook that we are here. I want to give everybody a chance to come on, because this is a very, very, very important live video that we have today for you. And I know you're going to be very blessed by it. And it's also going to change what's happening in our country. Obviously, we've been pounding the pavement for a very long time, trying to do this. And, now we have the opportunity to really expose, and you're going to be shocked. You're literally going to be shocked as to who this is. And so I see the viewers on here. Hi, I see new people. It's kind of hard for me to look at both screens. Oh my gosh, we even have Ramona from Canada. Hi, actually, Ramona is a chapter leader, my chapter leader for Punish for Protecting in Canada. So let's wave hi to her and let's say hello to her. Hi, Kelly from Texas. I see you on. Hi, Franca. How are you? So I'm glad you guys are joining. I want to wait a little bit more so we get more viewers, because I don't usually use my YouTube channel for live feeds. I use Facebook. So I do want to bring on more people, and then we're going to get right to it. And again, for those of you that just joined, today we're going to be unveiling a very, very big person. That's, I don't even know how to really say this. I really would like for her to she'll kind of talk more about this, but we're going to be exposing together somebody who is very globally known. We're going to talk about humanitarianism and how it looks a certain way and what's really behind it. We're going to be exposing also child trafficking and how it's all infiltrated and what it is within the family court and this child, what they call child protective services, which we know are child predator services. So we're going to be bringing her out today to help me expose this. And I've been very grateful because if anybody has ever seen or read my book or knew my story, my son and I were actually on, and I know you guys have heard me talk about this, we were actually on a Missing and Exploited at one point in time, which was shocking. And I remember calling the court and saying, we're not missing. We're not missing, nothing like that. My son's not missing. Like, I'm right here, We had the over-the-top judge, Anthony McGinty, who pulled this whole big, insane, over the top. And as you guys know, the end results, it made me a stronger fighter for families and to see what's happening in this horrible, horrible system and what things are. National Center for Missing and Exploited. And I remember thinking at that time, God shows us ways sometimes through our own suffering and pain, what's really going on in the world. And I remember thinking, my goodness, like, they're exploiting my child and I by claiming we're missing. I was never arrested for like kidnapping my son, but I've heard them say people are kidnapping their children. And it's the courts that are doing it. It's the courts. Okay. It's the child predator services and the courts and their outrageous, just ways that they do things that are so, if you want to look at this professionally, what they're doing is just, there's no prudency to it whatsoever. It's just done haphazardly. They make these decisions for money, for gain, and people have gotten onto them at this point. Like, there's many more of us than there are of them, and we've gotten onto their game, and so to speak. And so, but hello to the new people. I see you guys all joining, and thank you for joining. And let's get ready for the unveiling of who this person is. This might be a slight hint of what we're going to be exposing today. I'm going to go ahead and bring her out, and actually, here she is. I'm going to bring you out and I'm going to let you introduce yourself to the audience. And as soon as you begin to speak, you will show up on the screen. So go ahead.
Well, hi, everyone. And thank you so much, Francesca. I couldn't do this without you. And I think that we've both been very blessed to each other. I will say thank you for what you've been doing in your fight. My name is Megan Walsh. I am the daughter of John Walsh, the host of America's Most Wanted. But more importantly, I am the younger sister of Adam Walsh, who was the little boy with the baseball bat that was kidnapped from the Sears department store in Hollywood, Florida in 1981, and was really the reason why the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children was created, and really what that came from. So that's really who I am. And recently we have been put into this system that we're going to be talking about today. And mostly due to the fact that I was questioning things. I was starting to research, and I have been an advocate for anti-corruption and family court, as well as child protective services. And so, you know, I'm really here. I've been speaking out. I've been advocating for a long time, and now I'm personally in it with my 3 beautiful children. And just like you said, Francesca, it's definitely making me stronger. It's definitely helping others in this fight, if you will, and to really expose it. I think that the masses really have, you know, still there's a lingering, misconception that it is protecting our children and our families, and sadly and horrifically, it is absolutely not. It is breaking them and profiting from us.
And it is amazing, and I'm sure it's going to be amazing to the viewing audience, that this man, John Walsh, your dad, and your mother, would do this to you and to their own grandchildren. If this doesn't literally expose what's happening, what we've been talking about for so many years, but if this in and of itself doesn't say nobody is not at risk of this vile treatment to human life, nobody. And now here you are, the daughter of somebody who so many look up to, thinking, oh my goodness, this poor family, look at what he's done. He's made triumph out of tragedy. You know, Adam Walsh, which we're going to get more into today. We're going to, as we talk about Epstein and so many different things, some live video today. And you guys really make sure you get your friends and get around this video right now to watch it. Obviously, you can see this later after the live is over, but it's imperative that you watch it now, because I am giving away one free autographed copy of my best-selling book, Punished for Protecting the Injustice System of Family Court, and one free consultation. And I just want to let you know, we did just have a very successful case after 3 years of a child being taken through the system from a very lovely and wonderful family, which we will go live. We have finally won the case. We have a few more months worth of a little bit of work that has to be accomplished, but this was a 3-year grueling horror story, and they all are. But one of the things I said is, I've told you guys for years, you've heard me, if you follow me, no one is exempt from being harmed. I don't care who you are. I don't care what political label you wear. I don't care what religious background you are, male or female, and especially females. Mothers and children are getting the worst end of it. But I don't care who you are. No one is exempt from being harmed by this diabolical system. People thought it just happened to poor people or uneducated people. That is so far from the truth, because the more money you have, okay, I work with millionaires, the more money you have, don't think you cannot be harmed, because I've seen them destroy people who own, and I'm not joking when I say this, that own full buildings in New York City. So they have lots of money, okay? And I've seen them completely destroy everything about their lives. So I'm going to go back to you, Megan. And again, I'm watching the chat, because one person will win the book, one person will win, and you have to be in chat, and I'm going to be watching your chat comments and so on. And that is how I'm going to pick my 2 winners. And the reason I'm doing this, I'm sorry, Megan, I'm going to have you speak. The reason I'm doing this is because I want to see where your heart is with regards to what we're doing here. Because see, this is a heart issue, and I have a lot to say about that. And we need to fight for our neighbors. I've said it over and over again. I had a post up I put today because I was really annoyed because somebody targeted somebody else, supposedly advocate against advocate, that I will never work with people like that, because I don't care about you. I may not like your presidential choice. I may not like your political views, but if you're a human being and your children are being harmed through this horrible system, I will put that aside and I will work with you to help you and your children, because I want to see the safety, sanctity, and preservation of our American families. And that person had a political view on somebody else and told people to stay away from the other person because of such and such, which I won't even get into. It's so ignorant. And I will never work with a person like that. This is about the human race. This is about love your neighbor as yourself, and why this is so urgent that we become human again, okay, in order to fix this mess, this disgusting mess. And, you know, I have Ramona on, and she's a chapter leader in Canada. We know that this is all over the globe, and Megan's dad is globally known for this entire story, and this is all relative. So Megan, if you can touch more on your story and on your brother and your brothers and so on and so forth, your family.
Absolutely. Thank you again. And I will address the elephant in the room. I do have a Band-Aid on my nose for treatment. I am healing basal cell carcinoma skin cancer holistically using Rick Simpson oil. And I highly encourage everyone to look into that option if that's something that you're dealing with as well. But to get to my family and to get to this situation, you know, again, I have been born into this. I was born into it, and essentially weeks after I was born, presented to President Reagan in the Rose Garden. I was later taken to him at 2.5 years old and presented with the black box of jelly beans and things like that. So why I say that is that I have been around royalty, presidents, and the industry my entire life, as well as Hollywood. So, you know, that's where I come from. I, again, was raised in it. And, you know, I love my parents with all of my heart. I have always honored them. And I know that this is difficult information for a lot of people to receive and hear, just as it is myself in many ways and has been for the years that this has been coming to a head. You know, I was given the same narrative that everyone was given 40 years ago when my brother went missing, and my father and mother stepped forward and were given, you know, the opportunities, if you will, to advocate and to create the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. I've been involved with the National Center in the past, dealing, you know, I left the industry actually 5 years ago. I was in art, fashion, and music. My 5-year-old son is actually with the childhood best friend and current friend of Kanye West. So it's very integrated in terms of the industry and the elites. And I left the industry to start a family community learning farm and to be a life coach and healer to those specifically dealing with trauma and childhood trauma and things of that nature. As I mentioned earlier, I was advocating as well against and speaking out, you know, about exactly what we're talking about. And Francesca, what you've done so amazingly for so long. So that's a bit of what was going on. And just the different things that I had started seeing within my family. I was being approached by the public with questions about the National Center, people like yourself who had their own experiences and unfortunately negative experiences, either being put on the missing and exploited list or, you know, reporting themselves in regards to their children being, you know, targeted online, and then they would call back later and those reports would be missing. We know we have the issues with Amber Alert and, you know, protective parents, as obviously you know very well and your viewers know. So it is a wide, you know, spectrum, as we also know that this is and becomes. But I started questioning things and also speaking up about the coercive control and narcissistic abuse that I have endured from my family covertly for most of my life. As we know, within CPS, there's a playbook to break families. There's also a playbook to break whistleblowers, if you will, like myself, and advocates and doing that. So especially if you are amongst those families, once you start questioning or speaking out, they literally take everything from you, including your children. They make you desolate. They put you in prison. They lock you up in a mental hospital. They drug you, different things until you break, essentially. So that's the situation that I was dealing with. I was speaking up about the abuse, as well as questioning my father, his dealings with the National Center, their funding, as well as his connections, which are very, very deep, to Haiti, to the Bahamas, and to trafficking, drugs and children. And we know that goes hand in hand. So I had started asking about that, inquiring, and I was met with much adversity. I'm almost 40 years old, and instead of just talking to me and maybe even giving me their PR response from the National Center regarding these situations, I again was met with "you're crazy" and much adversity, especially from my father, which was very concerning to me. We also have a national issue of guardianship and conservatorship fraud, which this includes as well. It's what they're currently trying to attempt. But to go back to the beginning, once I was questioning that, not this past Thanksgiving, but the Thanksgiving before, I was still trying to work things out. I had my own therapist, and I was trying to work things out and ask my parents to get help for themselves finally, after 40 years of having their child taken, and you know, knowing the infidelity, the promiscuity, the addiction issues, and everything that I've watched them you know, go through my entire life. So I started speaking up about that, and I went to their home with my children on Thanksgiving, and they started to, I tried to leave actually, because they are very addicted to drama, and I did not want to do it anymore. I said, we'll try again. They then told me that they were going to keep my daughter in the house, and that I could take my 2 sons and leave if I would just leave her. And I said, of course, as a mother, Francesca, you would know. I said, no, all of my children are coming. We're leaving. And my father started antagonizing me again, very abusively. And my mother actually started to film me to set this up. And she had always kind of threatened me in the past to take my children with her money. And then when I would address it with my father, he would gaslight me and say that was crazy. We tell you all the time what an amazing mother you are. I was dependent on my family because I was building the farm and working towards my career. So they knew that I was dependent on them. And also, you know, my home that they had gotten for me, I did not know that my father was on half of it. So these different things that they had hidden, you know, and that's in terms of, this does happen a lot with elite